You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to AI for You. Today's use case is about using AI to write job descriptions. This was something that was mentioned in today's discussion, and we've been working on a custom GPT to help with this very thing, so I thought it was a good opportunity to share. Also, anytime you're using one of the prompts we showcase in the episodes, if it works well for you, please let me know. And if it doesn't, and if you find better ways to do the same thing or ways to edit the prompt for better performance, please share with me. In higher ed, we have an issue with employee retention, which means that we often have to create new job descriptions or revise existing job descriptions. And that's a time-consuming process. Here's a prompt that can help create an initial draft of a job description from just a job title or even a vague understanding of the job role. It will create a new job description based on examples of job descriptions that you upload. The more examples you provide, the better the output will be. And one of the things I really like about these types of prompts is that they start off by asking you all the questions they need to get the right data to create the best job description. As always, you can customize this prompt for different scenarios, and the actual prompt will be in the show notes. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kellie Campbell, CIO of Vermont State Colleges System. Kellie brings a unique perspective on implementing AI across multiple institutions while maintaining system-wide consistency. Let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to AI for You, the go-to podcast for higher ed professionals looking to integrate AI into their daily work. I'm your host, Brian Piper, the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. Join me every other Thursday for practical uses of AI within higher education communications, marketing, and student engagement. We'll focus on ways to quickly integrate AI into your teams to increase your efficiency and effectiveness and help you optimize your workflows and processes. I'll interview experts and feature relevant use cases with the goal that every episode gives you at least one thing you can take away and start leveraging in your job today. AI for You is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Well, Kellie, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. I appreciate it.
So you work with several different institutions who have all kind of come together. Tell me about some of the different ways that you are integrating or seeing AI integrated across the Vermont State Colleges system.
Yes, well, so as you might or might not know, just to give brief context to the Vermont State Colleges system, we have recently gone through some pretty significant transformation in our state to do some consolidation of what were previously really almost 4 separate institutions. And I say almost 4 because we did have a merger from two institutions in the northern part of our state prior to this round of consolidation. So from a culture and change perspective, it's really been 4 institutions into one to make up Vermont State University. And so we still have our footprint very much embedded into our communities in Vermont, but under one institution as Vermont State University. And then in addition, we have our community college. So I am in a position where I get to think about this for the whole system, and then I get to think about this for Vermont State and the community college, which, as we know, as 2 separate institutions, have some differing needs. So I think from an AI perspective right now, there's a lot of places we're at in this. But to be blunt, I think one of the things that I'm trying to work through is really a system-wide approach to readiness and understanding that implementation might look different. But I think where can we be common, and where can we be common in terms of preparing our workforce, in terms of just a basic understanding around AI? Where can we be common in terms of our policies? Where can we be common in terms of starting to think about our data integrity and our data broadly? And then, beyond that, I think trying to find places where for people that are ready to move faster than others, how do we support them? And there's a lot of ways we're seeing that. We're seeing that on the business side of things in terms of how people want to start adapting and using AI to support their day-to-day workflow and save time and find new opportunities to do things differently. And then, of course, we are also seeing that in terms of academics, right, and how we're supporting students. So it's really this phase right now where I feel strongly that if we can support everyone with broad resources, broad tools, broad understanding, and then I think there will be pockets of more timely innovation or readiness to move on specific projects. So that's broadly where we are.
And so when you're going around talking to these different institutions, is there kind of a common ground between do you see you're talking about pockets of people who are more enthusiastic or ready or eager to adopt than others. Do you see a difference between the community colleges versus four-year schools, or is it a leadership issue? Where do
Yeah.
you see the most, I don't know, kind of either resistance or enthusiasm around the technology?
I think so. We had a really great event in August. We sponsored a system-wide AI retreat where we brought folks from both our community college and from Vermont State together. And our whole program and curriculum was actually a lot of folks internally to share a little bit about how they're thinking about it and what they're doing in their own areas of expertise. But we also obviously brought some external folks in. I think just to briefly touch on the academic side, I think faculty are a little bit everywhere right now. I think you have some faculty that are quickly adopting and practicing and playing with some tools and trying to understand how is this changing the work that my students are submitting? How am I thinking about assessment differently? And to be blunt, some people who are really scared about that. That's a very scary conversation, especially for people who've taught for many, many years. And it's really starting to disrupt the way we think about learning and showing mastery of work. And so I think there is a lot of emotions mixed into that, but I also think there are pockets of faculty that are and will be leaders in that area. And so those are all emotions that I would expect. I would say on the kind of business side, you might say, of the institutions, I'll just, our community college, just structured different, is an institution that has to be very nimble, very responsive, very fluid in how that's a huge part of their mission, right? In terms of how they're supporting students. They have a different faculty workforce, they have a different student body. And so I will say, I think for the community college, I'm seeing as even as part of their strategic plan, like a willingness to maybe dive in faster and really understand how this can support a 24/7 diverse student population. That's not to say Vermont State and our university there is not interested, but I think, just if I have to look at a system level perspective, I think the community college, this is just how they've always operated. And I think there's a willingness to maybe accelerate a little faster there in terms of as long as it supports students, right? They're student first. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to connect AI to some of the objectives of how they serve students in a more holistic way.
So that's interesting. And from a staff perspective, from an administrative perspective, what areas within the different institutions do you see leading the way? Because I've talked with lots of different institutions, and sometimes it tends to be IT, sometimes it tends to be marketing. And I think there are very different kind of approaches that those, you know, various groups take towards integration or towards the speed of which they want to move forward. So what are your thoughts on that from your particular pace?
We are in the middle, because life is not boring enough. We are in the middle of looking at our enterprise resource planning environment. And for folks who may or may not know what that is really like the core software that supports our core student information system and many of the systems that connect into that. And Brian, what that's doing is it's giving us a couple of opportunities. One, it's giving us a chance to think about in this new kind of software environment, a chance to rethink business process, and through that lens of business process to think about, as we're shopping, what AI tools are built into these systems that can change our workflow and our processes. So the benefit of that is that the ERP touches many areas across our organization. And so I think it's prompting a lot of areas to understand that we have to be thinking about this, and we have to be thinking about this thoughtfully. But I will say, I think the student services side, student success, and some of those areas that work very closely with some of our functional teams are really interested in, if a student has a question, they want to ask that question and they're not necessarily caring who answers it. It could be you in one office, it could be me in another office, it could be a combined answer between both of us, but they just want one answer, right? Most people can get on board in our organization, right? And so I think that's where I'm seeing some momentum and interest.
And another, I mean, you also are facing, you talked a little bit about the infrastructure, the hardware, software infrastructure that we're all kind of dealing with. We know higher ed tends to be very siloed and segmented. And we know the importance of like data and content governance, because when you start training these tools on your brand content or your brand data, if we don't have clean data, if we don't have good, up to date, and we haven't archived or gotten rid of old, out of date data or content, it's going to create problems. And we're going to have issues with the outputs that we're getting from these tools. Are you seeing kind of more thought around like consolidating solutions or figuring out better ways to store or access our data? And it's interesting, your position specifically being in charge of several different institutions who have come together, who I'm sure have very different digital landscapes.
Yes. That is the loaded question, right? I think many people, that, to be blunt, that is the challenge right now. People want to build the house, but they don't understand the foundation, right? And education around the foundation is really important. And for some people, it's not the most exciting topic of where does data live and where does it come, right? You just want the answer. So, I think like many institutions and organizations going through trying to think about AI right now, the data piece specifically, thinking about the ERP environment is giving us an opportunity to really, as we move forward with a potential new ERP solution, it's going to give us a chance to address, we've been on our current environment for 20 years. That's a lot of data, right? So there's a data cleanup and retention piece that I am excited we get to look at from a system level perspective. That's huge in terms of how we do that. But also that is also forcing us to look at where are all the places today. There's a lot of business processes that exist outside of our official systems of record where we might pull data from. That can be in the form of spreadsheets and Word documents and our Microsoft environment. And so concurrent to the ERP project, one of the things that I'm also starting with my team is a readiness in our Microsoft 365 tenant. And that has become a place where we really store a lot of information across the system, collaborative documents, collaborative spreadsheets, and readying the tenant to support AI has really, I was hoping to go the oversimplified CIO flip the light switch route, and my team's like, no, Kelly, nice try. We have a lot of work to do on the technology side to really ready our tenant for that, but that will give us a chance to work with our users around file management practices, cleaning out all things. So it's really being intentional about cleaning house. And I think many times in higher ed, that is not always a best practice. And I think there's a lot of benefits from a security perspective to doing that, being a public institutions, from a retention side on that. There's just a lot of benefits to cleaning up the data piece. So we're working through the cobwebs, but I think generally speaking, it's a really important process, and we have a real opportunity to, I think, address some of the challenges we would have by looking at things broadly through the ERP project, in addition to, the Microsoft cleanup effort we are seeking to tackle.
So those are all huge projects, right? When you start thinking about the scale and the scope of these sort of things, whether it's cleaning up the data landscape or cleaning up the content or figuring out how to, create awareness and education for everyone in your institution, faculty, staff, students around this new technology. I mean, it's really a huge change management process that is overwhelming to so many institutions out there. What advice do you have for institutions who really haven't started thinking about this, how to integrate AI or how to get their systems ready? Where do they start?
That's a very good question. So I think, first of all, it's okay if you have not started, right? I mean, I think it's just naming that. I think there are a lot of people and a lot of people in IT leadership, especially, that are trying to figure this out and want to do this right. But if you're not doing something about it, now would be the time to start. And I think there's a lot of ways you can start, and that might be particular to your institution or organization, but it's okay to start small. And if I was to be in a place where I didn't already have some momentum around this, I think I would be using a framework. And there's a lot of different frameworks out there, but actually EDUCAUSE has a really helpful generative AI readiness resource that we used internally. And it looks at AI readiness through the lens of not just technology and data, but through the lens of governance and leadership and fiscal resources. And I actually used that framework during the retreat I spoke about a few moments ago, where I brought folks together across the system. And that was really a critical day for us, because we came together and we started to comprehensively understand that this AI initiative is more than just one thing, right? And so we use that framework to just start having some discussions. And I actually had pulled together that day a group of about 20, 25 people from across the system and said, can I steal you for an hour and can we go through this framework? And I positioned it as AI readiness. And I think if for anybody really just getting started, I think getting a group of interested folks together that represent maybe some diverse areas across your institution and using a framework to just start discussion, what will start elevating, because it did for me, is the areas of focus, right? So governance and policy was like a big one that surfaced for us. So step one was like, okay, let's work with our legal team and develop a guiding policy for people. That's a good first step. The second thing was, how are we bringing new things into our environment? Are we doing security reviews on them? That was a big one for my IT team. Okay, let's start with that small piece. So it's building blocks, and eventually now, I mean, to be blunt, I haven't been at that that long, right? It's been building blocks for us. And I think for anybody getting started, I would use some structure. I would get some friends in a room, and I would see where are 2 or 3 initial things you can do to start moving the conversation. And eventually you'll start to see the rest of the puzzle. The last thing I would say, Brian, is I think it's really important to just look external within your professional networks. There's a lot of people talking about this right now. I know I keep referencing EDUCAUSE because I was just recently there, but there are a lot of people trying to figure this out. You don't have to build this alone. So go to communities in your professional network, ask for help, share resources. You can find a lot online, but I think you'll find a lot of benefit to engaging and engaging with community.
Absolutely. And any higher ed community you go into, this is a hot topic of conversation everywhere, because we're all going to have to figure out how to incorporate this and integrate this into our processes and workflows.
Right.
It's fantastic that your institution, a group of institutions, has leadership, has you looking at this and really thinking about it, figuring out how to integrate it, knowing that this is happening and is occurring. What advice would you have for people who are maybe enthusiasts working at institutions where there is a lot of pushback from IT or from leadership around this technology, who are just like waiting to see what happens, or waiting to see if this is just, a passing phase that's not really going to impact them?
That can be really difficult, right? I think it's leadership, engaging leadership, I think sometimes can be challenging, because this does take investment, and it takes investment not only from a financial perspective, but from a resource perspective. So there has to be a story told that of why this not above, but why this be a priority in alignment with other priorities. And I think, to be blunt, there's a lot of competing priorities right now for my time, for my leadership's time. And, you do need a champion. If you do not have a champion, I think for somebody who might be an enthusiast and trying to find a way in, I think proofs of concept can be really valuable in finding a pocket to, quote, innovate or try something, and assess that, document it, and then find other areas across your institution where you can share that story. It might be informal. It might be just bringing some colleagues together for a lunch and learn and sharing the outcome of that. But then that might organically grow, right? Word will start spreading. I think engaging some faculty, if you're in a position to do that, is a really powerful thing. If faculty start to think about supporting it, that might give you some legs to think about it. And then, I think gathering educational material about what is AI. I talk a lot. I did a panel not that long ago, and I said, just saying AI is such a broad topic, right? And we've had AI in our world for some time. If you go on to a streamed Netflix, the fact that certain things come up in your based off of your historical previews, right? Those are layers of AI. But the fact that generative AI is so broadly accessible now, it really starts to change the landscape. And when you start to talk about what that means for how faculty teach, how faculty assess, how people do their work, you have to educate sometimes leadership on what that means. And so if you're not in a position where you're able to influence, I would start with like-minded community members and think about proofs of concept, think about educational materials, and just try to kind of naturally bubble it up from there. The last ditch effort I would do, this is me being really transparent, but the other place you can really plug this is on the security side of running your enterprise. AI needs data, as we both know, and institutional data is something that we have an obligation to protect. And if you don't provide the resources for people, if you don't provide the policy and the framework, people will go off and use tools that are unsupported. And from a CIO perspective, that's what keeps me up at night, right? So going to your IT leadership and framing it around data security and risk, if I was somebody who was not thinking about this, that would wake me up. So if you're needing to kind of poke the bear there, I think security is a really great way to stir up some energy in your CIO.
That is really spectacular advice. And you're really describing the process that I used to, create more awareness around AI, and the risks of not adopting, I think, were some of the key factors that really helped leadership realize that this was something that we need to be moving on and make a priority. In your conversations and talking with, within your institutions and with other institutions at other events and with other groups, what are some of the most interesting use cases of AI that you've seen that get you excited about getting to the stage where we can integrate this, or here's something that we're doing that's been incredibly helpful?
I think there's a lot of pockets of exciting research going on right now. And I think a big one that I was just talking to a colleague when I was at a recent conference is really specific academic tutors and resources that are helping students through certain topics. Some of those are AI services that are built within the institution for that discipline. Others are, obviously coming to market quickly, are providers who are wanting you to kind of look at those products. If you've looked at Khan Academy recently, you'll see like AI is fully built into that, right? And so I think there's a lot of interesting use cases that higher eds are playing with right now in terms of how do those AI services support just-in-time learning for students as they're navigating a certain discipline, a certain topic. And to me, that's really, when you put students at the center of learning, there's a lot of ways students learn, and the faculty play a critical role in that. But there's a lot of other places for long time students have gone to learn material, YouTube and Google and all those places, right? So AI brings a whole other layer to that. And I think it's really interesting for folks that are doing research right now to assess student learning outcomes in that area. I think there are a lot of, in addition to that, I spoke a little bit about this a moment ago, but I think there are a lot of institutions that are building bots to provide student services information, right? Back to that concept of students want one, whether it's a question about their bill or are there chicken patties in the dining hall today, or when's vacation in 2 weeks or 1 week, right? Like students just want that just in time answer. So I think you're seeing student services being built out in a really exciting way. But I think the data piece is what's probably preventing people. I know it's preventing us from quickly standing up, right? Ours. So I think that's something we are working through. And then maybe a piece we haven't touched on, but folks are really starting to adopt this just in their day-to-day workflow. And so, we are a Microsoft partner, and I think Microsoft Copilot is built into our Microsoft environment, and we're starting a strategy of rolling that out across the system. But I think that's really starting to change how people take notes, how people draft emails, how people, are working, right? And that presents some real opportunity just from an individual perspective to save time, etc. Right. And so there's a lot of benefit to individuals there, especially I'll just speak for myself, right? When I'm here, there, everywhere, and just places I can save time. Right. So
Right.
that's just a few examples. There's a lot more, but I'll pause there. But I think this is an area we're going to see really growth very
Yeah.
soon.
Absolutely. And being able to, get insights into how other people are using the tools. I mean, we've even from the marketing side, we've gotten inspiration from things that have been happening on the academic side. So our business school created some virtual TAs and we thought, well, why can't
Yeah.
we create virtual personas that we can test our content
Mhm.
against? So getting inspiration from how other teams are using this technology, I think is critical.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I mean, this technology is changing rapidly and evolving quickly. And, from the amount of revenue that's being pushed into this area, I don't think we're going to see a slowdown in
Mm.
the growth of these systems. Where do you see AI going over the next few years? And what are you most excited about as in how it's going to help us as higher education institutions?
I see a couple of things. One, on the academic side, I think it is going to really challenge our faculty, not in a bad way, I think in a good way, but it's going to challenge, I think, how students show mastery of learning. And I think it's really going to force us to think very differently around how we assess student learning. And folks have been grappling with that in different areas as technologies come out. I mean, when the internet started and on like YouTube, I remember, right, there's been these moments in history where it's like that students can just go there and they don't need me anymore. And, the thing I said recently at a panel is I said the faculty role has continued to evolve. It has continued to evolve and it will continue to evolve. The one thing we know is you play a critical role in supporting student learning. But what that looks like might change and it will continue to change, whether it's AI or something else. So I think that's, one of the things as I'm looking at supporting our system is really how do I help provide resources to support faculty and thinking through that thoughtfully and productively and quite frankly with some immediacy. I think we have to be proactive on that. I also think over the next couple of years, really broadly, outside of rolling out services to students, a huge piece of what I think higher ed and beyond higher ed needs to figure out is how does this change our workforce? And how do we prepare our workforce? Just to give you an example, from a human resources side, like there is a world where you will probably never have to write a job description again. Or, there's just so many processes that we've always done. And having a workforce that is ready for that change and can maximize that change and not replace them, but I think about it as the skeleton around you that can support you, the exoskeleton around you that can support you. And so I think we have to support our workforce with that transition. And then in doing so, I think it gives higher eds a real opportunity to think differently about how we provide services and the resources to do that. And if you are an institution that is financially challenged and trying to find opportunity, that doesn't have to be a negative conversation. It doesn't have to be one that results in we're going to replace you for AI. It becomes a conversation of we all have a common objective to support students really, really well and give them the best experience possible. There's a lot of ways to do that. And quite frankly, being historically working in institutions that have been a little more financially challenged, we have to find ways to get creative. And so if I can free up my people with the use of AI and redirect them, then we can work on retention objectives and so many more objectives across the system that we just don't have time to do right now because people are stuck in the work. So I think outside of the AI expansion, I think it's really the structure of how we run our organizations. And that's going to take, I talk a lot about the intersection of people, technology, and data. This is one of those topics, and that requires really thoughtful facilitation. But I think that is what higher ed over the next 2 to 3 years is going to have to grapple with. The last thing I'll say, Brian, I think, and I'm also talking about this in my space, is I think we also have to spend some time thinking about the DEI challenges around AI and think about that through the lens of who's creating the data. Do you have diverse voices and perspectives in creating that data? and making sure that we do that work intentionally. And because the output of the data needs to represent all involved, right? So I think there's a lot of DEI issues wrapped into AI, which could probably be a whole other discussion. But I think just being proactive about understanding that you have to have diverse voices and representation in these conversations is also going to be something that higher ed has. I think higher ed can and should be leaders in doing. And so that's maybe the last piece I'll say related to the next couple of years of work ahead of us.
Yeah, and that's so critical because we know these systems are biased and we know they
Right.
hallucinate and make things up. So I think it's going to be even more critical as this replaces some of the repetitive work that we do, that we are more thoughtful about the strategic and the ethical ramifications, and that we have all the right people involved in looking at the work before it goes out to make sure that this does fit all of our audiences and
Right.
does support and give credence to every voice that we need to have heard. So that's fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
One of the last questions I always end with is, how are you using AI in your personal processes to help provide efficiency or better effectiveness?
My team a couple of weeks ago was like, Kelly, how are you using this? And somebody who's championing it and has a lot of thoughts about it. And I said, I'm still working through the learning of it, but I've been given more tools. And one of them definitely has been, I referenced it a moment ago, Copilot. And because it is a behavior shift, right? I can talk about AI all day long, but I still like typing my emails. So I have really started to use it just in terms of taking notes at meetings, drafting emails. I have so much content coming at me every day from my workflows, and being able to use Copilot to summarize. I know I had this discussion somewhere with somebody, instead of going back through my email and going back through all of my team's messages. That's actually really been a game changer for me, because it's filtering through all my information in my inbox, all my documents, all of my chats. And so that has really been a game changer for me in terms of my own workflow. So I've had some fun with it. I still have some learning to do, and I think it's really important that I do that learning so I can thoughtfully participate. But and then I'll just say some of the other tools in my personal life. I've just, it's like I don't have to start from scratch. So I've been playing around with some other tools, some other unsupported tools from my work life, and but tools that I think are allowing me to not spend so much time drafting. But I do a lot of service work and other work outside of my day to day as CIO, and I want to do those things, but it takes time, and so I'm trying to find ways to leverage those tools to be productive and allow me to spread myself out a little more. So it's been fun. It's good learning and more to go. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with this technology, is we're all learning. And then as soon as we think we've got our hands wrapped around something, they change it, or a new feature comes out, or a new model comes out. And you basically have to go back and say, what can we do now? How is this affecting, our all this framework and all this structure that we've created around the best ways to do it? Now we got to start all over again. But
Exactly.
We're all constantly learning. That's the passion,
Exactly. That's why we're in higher ed, right? And the moment we think we know it all, we're not doing it right. So I lean on my team a lot. You don't have to be completely fluent to navigate and be part of these conversations. You just have to be interested and care. And I think you can make some good change in this area. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Kelly, and for sharing your insights and your time with us. If people want to reach out and stay in touch with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide my email in the bio, Brian, if that's okay. And I'll also provide my LinkedIn, and I would love to collaborate. I think collaboration is important, and I would love to engage in the network with other people. So thank you for the opportunity to do so. And thank you for having me here today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Take care.
What a brilliant way to think about building AI readiness across multiple institutions. Kelly's emphasis on establishing strong foundations before rushing to implement AI tools provides valuable guidance for any institution starting its AI journey. Her approach to building consensus while allowing for different implementation speeds shows how to balance consistency with individual institutional needs. The key takeaway is that successful AI integration requires careful attention to fundamentals, from data governance to workflow presentation, while also maintaining focus on supporting student success. Whether you're just starting or are already implementing AI solutions, this systematic approach provides a valuable framework for moving forward. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating. Thank you for listening to another episode of AI for You. I hope you found at least one useful thing you can take away and start adding to your workflows and processes today. Remember, the key to making the most of AI is to keep experimenting, keep learning, and of course, keep creating. AI for You is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Kadu, Day Kibbles, Shane Baglini, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.